So the first type of comma usage that we're going to go over has to do with combining two independent clauses. As you know, an independent clause is a complete sentence. It has all the parts that are necessary to form a sentence. And when you combine two of them, you can combine them using the conjunctions. There's 7 conjunctions. And the way to remember it is fan boys. For, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. Okay. These are the 7 words that can be used as a conjunction. And the word conjunction just means joining two things together. So when you combine two independent clauses with a conjunction, you also need a comma. Let's look at an example of a sentence. I went to the store, but it was closed. Okay. As you see, here's our conjunction, but. And on either side of the conjunction, there's an independent clause. I went to the store could be a sentence all by itself. It was closed could also be a sentence by itself. Okay. And so this sentence is missing a comma right here. When we have two independent clauses, we can join them with a comma and a conjunction. So I went to the store, comma, but it was closed. One of the things to be careful of is to not just put a comma every time you have a conjunction. Let's look at this sentence. Jim tried to learn how to swim, but never got over his fear of water. Just like in the previous sentence, there's a conjunction right here, but. And just like in the previous sentence, the first part of this sentence is an independent clause. Jim tried to learn how to swim. However, the second part of this sentence, never got over his fear of water, isn't an independent clause. This is actually just a compound verb. Jim tried, but never got over his fear of water. So there's just two things that Jim did here, but there's not a second subject in the second part of the sentence. And so we don't need a comma in this sentence, even though we have an independent clause followed by a conjunction, because we're only going to use a comma in this case when the two clauses that we're combining are both independent clauses. The next type of sentence I want to look at that needs a comma is when you start the sentence with an adverb clause. An adverb clause does the same thing that an adverb does. It just does it with more words. So an adverb modifies the verb, the who, what, where, when, why, or how of the verb. An adverb clause does the same thing. So let's look at this sentence. By the time Bill had gotten to the store, all the good deals were over. Were over is the verb in this case. Okay. And when were they over? They were over by the time Bill had gotten to the store. So this whole clause that starts the sentence is an adverb clause. It modifies when they were over. They were over by the time Bill had gotten to the store. And so you need a comma after the adverb clause. Another way of looking at this sentence is that everything that's underlined, which is the adverb clause, could be moved to the end of the sentence. You could say, all of the good deals were over by the time Bill had gotten to the store. Now in that case, you wouldn't need a comma. If the adverb clause comes at the end of the sentence, you usually don't need a comma to separate it. But if the adverb clause comes to the beginning of the sentence, then you need a clause to separate it. And so think of yourself as chunking this big adverb clause with the comma, so that the reader thinks of it as something separate. If they're going to move it to the back, they move everything that's underlined or everything that's before the comma. And so the comma helps show the reader how they can move things around in this case. Okay. All the good deals were over by the time Bill had gotten to the store. And if you want to pull it to the front, you have to pull everything that you've moved and put it before a comma. This can even be a single word. So if I say quickly, it was over, I want a comma here. Quickly is my adverb. In this case, it's an adverb, not an adverb clause, although it's also an adverb clause. Okay. And I could also move it to the end. It was over quickly. So just like in the last time, were over or was over is my verb. Quickly modifies how it was over. It was over quickly. And so if I start the sentence with an adverb clause, I need to have a comma after it. Sometimes, in some cases, you have two adverb clauses that starts the sentence. And in that case, you need a comma after each of the adverb clauses. Look at this sentence. Yesterday, while I was still at home, I got the phone call that changed everything. Okay. There's two different adverb clauses here. You could say yesterday, I got the phone call that changed everything. Yesterday modifies when you got the phone call. So here's your verb, I got, and got is modified by yesterday. Or you could say while I was still at home, I got the phone call that changed everything. You're also modifying when you got it by where you were when you got it. So this is the when, and this is also the when. Okay, there's two when adverb clauses that start this sentence. So it's yesterday, comma, while I was still at home, comma, I got the phone call that changed everything. And you can move these around as parts. While I was still at home, I got the phone call that changed everything yesterday. Now that would be a misplaced modifier because you're separating it too much, but you could move it to the end. You could also say yesterday, I got the phone call that changed everything while I was still at home. And so because you have two successive adverb clauses, each adverb clause is followed by a comma.